Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you, and welcome. If this is your first time, we'll have the chance to welcome you properly towards the end of the service. But also, if some of us, I'm sure, this is your first Sunday. You're a regular City Church member, but this is your first Sunday back here. So welcome. We're really happy to have you. Okay, so we started a series, a series within a series last week, and the series is about the book of Mark. We've been doing that for 4 years, and now we're coming to the home straight. Now, within that book of Mark, the series for this year is called Glorifying the Son of God. But within Glorifying the Son of God, we started one last week, a 3-part series on the end times, what Jesus had to say about the end times. And some people call this the theological study of this is called eschatology. And we said, in terms of motivation for this series, one of the things we wanted to achieve was this: for you not to find study about the end times confusing. We don't want you to be scared of it. We don't want to be confusing. And so hopefully, our beginning last week started to achieve that. How many of us understood, who were around last week, how many of us understood what was said last week? Okay. That means my goal was not really achieved. Okay, but at least a number of us did understand it. And so we're going to crack on. This is the longest chapter in the book of Mark, longest discourse that Jesus gave. And hopefully, maybe as we look at the three, you'll see how they are put together. Now, part of why I said that we shouldn't be confused, part of why I said we shouldn't get scared, is ultimately the Bible is about Jesus, and it's about the message about Jesus, which we call the gospel, right? I said an abbreviated way of defining the gospel is what is the revelation of God and his actions to save the world from start to finish, okay? Now, if you believe that, you're a Jesus follower. If you are a Jesus follower, you should not fear any of the things that are coming, quite simply. So even the study of the end times from start to finish, it's really about Jesus. It's really about what God is doing to save. And so last week we took the first couple of verses in chapter 13, and I don't want to do too long a recap, but we're talking about what Jesus said about the end of the age. And that end of the age made us see, can you put up the chart there? So we said there are different ages. If you look at the Bible, the way it's put together, different ages. It's not more than this. They're not 18, they're not 12, they're not 11. There are 5 of them. All right, and so you start in the Garden of Eden, the age of the garden there. That's like a temple. After that, you get into the age of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, those guys. But then once they started becoming instituted, then you had the age of temple Judaism, right? Most of what you see in the Old Testament religion. Now, when in this verse that we were studying, the disciples asked Jesus about the temple that the Jews worshipped in, and they were like, man, this place is magnificent, everything. Jesus says everything is going to be torn down, everything is going to be destroyed. When they heard that, because they believed Jesus was the Messiah, they believed that once the Messiah comes, you enter into the eternal age. So once they heard the temple was going to be destroyed, that meant we're going into the eternal age. Jesus corrected that. And Jesus said, nope, there's one more age that is coming. And it still has to do with the Messiah. In fact, it is the age of the Messiah. Because that Messiah that came must return to heaven and is enthroned. And because he's enthroned, now we are living in the age of the Messiah. And it's the age of the Messiah, the millennial age of the Messiah. The millennial, that doesn't mean 1,000 literal years. It's symbolic. The millennial reign of the Messiah is the age that precedes the eternal age. And so right now, today, we are in the millennial age of the Messiah. Amen. So in the previous age, the people of God were Israel, the Jews, right? In this age of the Messiah, the people of God are who? The church. And so when Jesus was saying the temple was going to be destroyed, he was talking about the end of an age that is transiting into the beginning of another age. Okay? Then we talked about some wonderful, beautiful things that should be happening there, that we, the church, at the new temple, the life of God, the river of God must flow from us to the world. And so where dead things are, they come back to life. Are we still together? Oh, that was a good summary of last week. Okay. So last week was a bit positive. We talked about Jesus said about the end of the age. And we are talking about when those things will be fulfilled and what is the sign that they're about to be fulfilled. So we talked about some positive things. Today, we want to talk about some negative things. And in fact, I want to talk about a negative personality. So if last week was the end, what Jesus said about the end of the age, this week is about what Jesus said about the Antichrist. Touch your neighbor and say, woohoo. Yeah, it's about to get hot in here. All right. So we're going to talk about that. So we have a lot to cover, so why don't we begin? Can you put up verse 14? Verse 14 starts with a phrase that I don't want you to miss out on. Verse 14, Mark 13, verse 14. It says, when you see the what? Abomination that causes desolation. The abomination that causes desolation. Now, before I carry on, turn to your neighbor and say, stick with him. All right, we are going to the end, though. Stick with me. Don't get distracted. No Instagram. If you see any of your neighbors on WhatsApp, just say, stick with him, stick with him. But if you see them on Instagram, on TikTok, say, the Antichrist is working on you. It's working. All right. So you see this phrase, the abomination that causes desolation. Now, remember last week I said something about, it's a quip that says, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often what? Rhymes. Now, this phrase, the abomination that causes desolation, can you see that it is in, it's quoted, it's like a quote, like it's in between two apostrophes. Can you see that? Right? Because it's something that existed before. We're not just hearing about it when Jesus says it, if you read the Bible. In fact, 500 years before Jesus said it, somebody else said it. Prophet Daniel. Two verses in the book of Daniel. Daniel 9:27. Let's look at that. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1:7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to the sacrifice and offering. And at the temple, he will set up what? All right? Until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. Give me Daniel, 2 chapters after Daniel, 11 verse 31. His armed forces will rise up to desecrate, you see temple coming up again, to desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice. So will put an end to the sacrifice and the offerings. This one is saying will abolish the daily sacrifice. Same thing. All right. They will set up, again, what would they set up? Now, the thing about this, any Jewish person, any Jewish scholar will tell you, this has already been fulfilled. In fact, it was fulfilled before Jesus even said it, spoke about it. The Jews were conquered by the Babylonians initially, so they were under the Babylonian Empire. But the Babylonian Empire fell to the Persian Empire. Then so the Jews were under the Persians. Then after that, that's the book of Esther, Ezra, and all of those things. But after that, the Persian Empire fell to the Greek Empire. All right? Now, part of that one is not, the period on that is not covered in the Bible. But we know that the Jews at that time Greek was the language that they were most speaking. I mean, the Bible is written in Greek, the New Testament. But then the Greek Empire kind of became unstable. It split into a number of empires, and over a period of time, there was an empire that rose up called the Seleucid Empire. It was a sort of Greek empire, right? It was an offshoot. They spoke Greek. And they had an emperor called Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Now, he was ruling over the Jews at the time, and he was brutal with the Jews for a number of reasons. But in 168 BC, he wanted to Hellenize. That's the word. He wanted to Hellenize Jewish customs. By Hellenizing, it's more like Greekifying. It wasn't just giving them the language that they should now start speaking another language, but he was trying to change Jewish customs to fit in with their own kind of culture. So, for instance, some of the things he wanted to do, he did. He abolished Sabbath laws. He banned circumcision. He burned Torahs. That's the Old Testament, but that's the Jewish Bible, right? But bad as he then went into the temple and he decided to do certain things. I remember last week I told you how important the temple was. Now, Jews, because of what God said, and not for Christians, thank God not for Christians, Jews don't like pigs. They can't eat pigs. They don't. Again, I said not for Christians. Isn't it wonderful to have Jesus? Imagine not being able to eat bacon and, God. That's strip. Prime bacon, that fat in between there. Turn to your neighbor and say, thank God for Jesus. Bacon. Anyway, but they weren't allowed. Pigs were an unclean animals. He forced them to eat pork. Not only did he do that, on the sacred altar in the temple, he sacrificed a pig. But particularly the abomination that was said that would be set up in the temple, he took an image of one of their gods, Zeus Olympus. He put an image of Zeus on top of the altar in the temple. So this led to a revolt. You probably have heard of the Maccabean revolt. A guy rose up. His name was Judas Maccabeus, the first person to start guerrilla warfare that a lot of people have been doing since then. And over a period of 3 years, they fought and they were able to, remove and rededicate the temple, consecrate the temple. Today, the Jews celebrate something called the Feast of Hanukkah. Right? It's because of that. And by the way, remember the second quote, passage, Daniel 11:31, where it says that they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. The next verse is a verse we all know. We're not quoting it here, but it's a verse we all know. But it was talking first and foremost about Judas Maccabeus. You know what that verse is? Those that do know their God, they shall be strong and they shall do exploits. Now, I'm going to the abomination that causes desolation to show you that prophecy that Jesus recalls has already been fulfilled. So why is Jesus recalling it about 500 years after? Why? Because history doesn't repeat itself, but it often would. And so that the template of what happened then is actually going to repeat itself. There was a desecration of the temple, except what Jesus was prophesying about was that the temple wasn't just going to be desecrated. This temple is going to be destroyed. And now, here's what I want to know, because sometimes when people get into this thing, again, about the end times, I was kind of say that sometimes a lot of those prophecies were on specific things. There were actual specific things that have happened in history. So what Jesus was talking about was exactly what happened in AD 70. About 30-something years after, he then prophesied the abomination that causes desolation. More terrible things were done in the temple, but the temple itself was destroyed. How do I know he wasn't talking about Lagos, per se, and he was talking about what happened in AD 70? Just look at the text again. Look at verse 14, and then we'll go to 15. When you see the abomination that causes desolation standing where it doesn't belong, let the reader understand, then let those who are where? Are you in Judea? Back in the day when I was still very deep, I would say, no, Judea means that you are on a spiritually low plane. I said, let them flee to the mountains, so let them go higher spiritually. Yeah, no. He's talking about those that were in Judea. Next verses. Let the one on the housetop not go down or enter into the house or take anything. You see the specificity. Next verse. 16. Let those who are not no one in the field go back to get their cloak. 17. How dreadful it would be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. We're going to 20, so 19, 18. Pray this will not take place in winter. You see all the specific nature of it, because those will be days of distress unequal from beginning when God created the world until now, and never to be equaled again. I'll come back to verse 20, but again, I can show you Luke talks about this, but he even gives more specificity. Again, I'm trying to show you that this thing was fulfilled at a particular time. Turn to your neighbor and say, still stick with him, still stick with him. All right, so in Luke chapter 21, notice what it says. It says, when you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, Jerusalem being surrounded by what? Can you see how specific it is? It's Jerusalem surrounded by armies. 21, you will see that it is, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. So he's talking about something. Just go to 25. Go to 25. They will fall by the sword. Yes, they'll be taken prisoners to all nations. Jerusalem will be trampled on by Gentiles until the times of Gentiles are fulfilled. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. What Daniel prophesied about was fulfilled 370 years after when Daniel said it. Jesus prophesied 500 years after Daniel, and it's fulfilled within 35, 36 years of when Jesus said it. So, what then does this have to do with us and the end of the end? Remember, we said that the end times are the millennial, is this time that Christ is in. What does it have to do with us? Now go back to verse 19. Because when it says that those days will not be equaled, because those days will be days of distress, unequal from beginning, when God created the world until now, and never to be equaled. It's not talking about some kind of future 7 years in the future of tribulation. And I don't want to go into, I know you saw 7 in Daniel 9:27. I'm not going into that. But here's what I mean. Because it has already been fulfilled in a very specific way, it sets up a template again for the end of the end on how this kind of thing will be applied. And what is going to be applied is this. In these last days from the beginning to the end, the people of God will continue to be persecuted as the people of God have been persecuted before, with utter devastation. They will be persecuted now as they have been persecuted 100 years, 200 years, 300 years ago, but they will be persecuted at different times and in different places. Does this make sense? So I made a reference to it that if you go to the north and you ask them about the time of tribulation, and you say, these are the things that will happen, these are the things that will happen, they're like, this is what we've been going through. Are we still together? So one thing that will characterize the end of the age is persecution. Persecution. And how do we respond sometimes? Now, some of us, we don't live in the places where this is happening. It doesn't mean it's not happening. That's why we as a church, for instance, now this year, and we'll reveal some of that, but we're in active discussions with some people to partner with some people on how we will continue to be sustained partners for some of our brothers in the north that are going through what they're going through. We will continue to pray for them. We'll pray for them today, right? That's one of the ways of supporting them. But also we want to be invested in training some of the pastors in helping them, in helping the people, because we know that in this time, this thing will be happening, while some of us are privileged for it not to happen. Amen to us. But Jesus then says, and this is more about what I'm talking about today, Jesus then said some other things will be happening also at that time. Verse 4, verse 5, and 6. Let's go to verse 5. So tell us when these things will happen and what will be the sign that they're all about to be fulfilled. Notice verse 5. He said to them, what? Watch out that no one, I didn't hear you well. Watch out that no one. All right, verse 6. Many will come in my name claiming I am he. And they will do what? Verse 20. If the Lord, 21. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Messiah, or look, there he is, do not believe it. 22. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. That elect comes again. The other time it says, if those days of persecution were not cut short, that even the elect will have been, everyone will have been destroyed. But for the sake of the elect, it was cut short. That is what happened in AD 70. If God didn't shorten the time, everyone would be destroyed. Why did he shorten the time? For the sake of the elect. Who are the elect? Those who followed the Messiah. Christians. So it's talking about Jewish Christians. If not all of the Jews will have been wiped out. And now he's now saying, those same elect, that deception will be happening such that even if it were possible, if not God came in, that even the very elect will be deceived. So I want you to choose two things that were happening. We've already identified persecution, but what's the second thing that will be happening during this period? I can't hear you. What will be the second thing that will be happening during this period? Deception. And I want us to see through the Bible how some of these things happen, and so that you'll be very rooted in your faith. You'll understand the things that you meant to understand, but you will not be confused on things that shouldn't confuse you. This is the book of Mark. I want to show you how this is repeated in other books in the Bible, in the New Testament. Let's go to our favorite book of the Bible, the book of Revelation. Now, don't get scared of Revelation. Revelation is a beautiful book if you understand how it's structured. It's like most books in some way. So it has a prologue, it has an epilogue. It has a beginning, like an introduction and a conclusion. All right? Chapter 1, and most of chapter 22 is the epilogue. Chapter 1 is the prologue, most of chapter 2 is the epilogue. Then you have these 7 letters to 7 churches, chapter 2 and chapter 3. Then you have, I think, chapter 4 and chapter 5, which have spawned more songs in Christianity than anyone, right? Where the throne room of God, where some are saying, holy, 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 some are saying, worthy, worthy, worthy. Now that throne room scene, 4 to 5, is the setting for every other thing that will happen before the epilogue. Does that make sense? Right? It's the setting for every other thing that will happen. And here's a beautiful thing about that book. Every other thing that will happen is given to us in cycles, but it's saying the same thing. It's given to us in cycles, but saying the same thing. Treasure come, favor come, Korah come. Let me show you very quickly. Stand, look at yourselves. Look at yourselves somehow. Do as though you're about to fight. Take a position like you're about to fight. Stop. No, why did you drop it? Stop. Now, have you ever seen movies where you get to this scene, they're about to fight, it now pauses. And, you know, some of that meme of, you're probably wondering, how did I get here? And in some of those movies, what happens is, we now focus on Treasure. We rewind to how Treasure, come. You stay like that, exactly. How Treasure got here, right? So we start telling about Treasure story, different things, how he got into the car, blah, blah. He was angry that day, and then Korah was wearing the color he hates the most, and then he's about to fight. Then we rewind with Korah. We start tracing how Korah got to that day, you know, his wife, very, very unhappy with him, blah, blah, right? She didn't cook for him again, and even though he should be cooking for her, blah, 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 and then he sees Favor, and Favor is not wearing the right colors, not wearing the right match of colors. And he's about to, and Favor as well, let's go. He didn't see good results in school. He's doing IT in this company. They've been annoying him. They've been sending him to buy akara and bread every time, and they want to send him to buy the akara and bread again, and he's about to. And then sometimes what happens is that we also take it to the future. We tell Treasure's story, right, all the way to the future, Korah's story all the way to the future, and Favor's story all the way to the future. Do you understand? So what is happening is that you are telling the same scene, but you're coming at it at different vantage points. Do you understand? And so when you're coming at different vantage points, you will be saying, you're talking about the same thing, but you are seeing different things that in Treasure's story, during the same time, you will be seeing different things that you will not see in Korah's stories. Does that make sense? But you're still talking about the same thing. Revelation chapter 6 all the way to Revelation chapter 22 verse 5 is doing exactly this. It is telling you the same story, but in different cycles. It's telling the same story of the same cycle, but from different vantage points. Does this make sense? So I want to touch on, thank you very much. Can you clap for them? So if you read from Revelation 6 to 8 verse 5, for instance, you will see one. If you go from 8:6 to the end of 11, you see another one. If you go from 12 verse 1 to 15 verse 4, you see another one. 15, and it goes on like that. So now, let me touch on that one. From Revelation 12 to the beginning of 15, it's telling you the beginning of history all the way to the end. But it's talking from the standpoint of what happened to the people of God. So in Revelation 12, we are told about a woman who is clothed with the sun, who has a crown of 12 stars on her head. What does the significance of 12, if you read the Bible, what does it tell you about 12? 12 what? 12 apostles, what does 12? You are correct, the 12 tribes. Why? That woman represents the people of God. And the people of God in the Old Testament were built on 12 what? Tribes. But in the New Testament, they are built on 12 apostles. What transits the people of God from the Old Covenant people to the New? What transits them? The ascension of the Messiah. Isn't it? So now this woman, now give me chapter 12 verse 1. It tells where, so this woman, we are told she's pregnant at a particular point. She wants to give birth. But as she wants to give birth, there's a dragon standing right in front of her, ready to devour the child. Who remembers the story of Jesus? When he was about to be born, or just when he was born, what happened? What did King Herod say? Destroy all the what? Male children. That's the dragon working. But then we are told the dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that he might devour her child the moment he was born. Keep going. Verse 5. She gave to a son, a male child, who will rule the nations with an iron scepter, and her child was snatched up to God and his. Now, people say, no. That's not what happened. He was born. He did miracles. He grew in wisdom and knowledge. He was betrayed. He died. He was buried. And then after he was buried, he rose from the dead. And after he rose from the dead, he visited his apostles for 50 days. Then he was just trying to tell the very long story very short. Do you understand? Because he's trying to go somewhere. Later, it even talks about, in that same chapter 12, that they overcame by the blood of the Lamb. So he's not saying that Jesus did not die. He's just trying to give you a snapshot very quickly because he's going somewhere. Are we getting the point? So by the time he's caught up to the throne, you already know that this woman, when she was pregnant with the child, that's Israel, the nation that's going to give birth to the Messiah. Once the Messiah has been given birth to, it's now the church. How do I know? Because when he says that he couldn't get the child because he was taken to the throne, he later then said, and so the dragon turned his attention to the other offspring of the woman, those who keep the commandments of God and follow Jesus Christ. Who is he talking about? Christians, the church. But notice he was caught up to the throne of God, meaning all the things that follow from chapter 12 all the way to the end of 14 and the beginning of 15, all the things that follow are within the context of the reign of the Messiah. Are you still with me? So now we're talking about that millennial reign. And what is happening is that this dragon is coming against the woman and those who follow her offspring. So I say all of that to set the context for chapter 13. Because in chapter 13, we are told that dragon then doesn't walk alone. He has two proxies that he's going to achieve this aim through. Two proxies or two beasts. One comes from the sea, the other one comes from the earth. All right, let's talk about them. The first one, the one that comes from the sea, what does it say it does? Verse 7, read it. It was given power to wage war against who? And to do what? What does that remind you of? Wage war against God's holy people. What? Somebody say it. Say it louder. Persecution. That reminds you of Mark chapter 13, doesn't it? It is within the reign of the Christ. The second beast, listen to how he describes it. Give me verse 14. Because of it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast, it did what? The Bible is not hard. What Jesus said in the book of Mark is depicted in the book of Revelation. Does that make sense? Jesus said that they will come and deceive because they will perform signs and wonders. This beast is giving what? Through signs and wonders. And what will it do? It will deceive. The same two things. Persecution and deception. Now, you know the devil is against God, but many times the way he shows he's against God is by trying to ape God. So what do we have? We have the dragon and we have two beasts. How many of them? And they are working in unison for one mission. So three that act as what? What does it remind you of? The Trinity. God, you're a smart church. But this is not the Trinity. This is a false triumvirate and an axis of evil. But if I then go down, remember our God who is 3 in 1, the second person of our God took on humanity. He's God, but he became human, and that's who we call the Messiah, right? Also named Jesus. So Jesus the Messiah, right? Or Jesus the Christ. These two beasts working together, right, depicted working together, is nothing less than what we call the Antichrist system. The two beasts working together. And I'll show you. Nothing less than the Antichrist system. Remember, the Antichrist The Antichrist is not just working against Christ, but he is in working against Christ in the reign of Christ, he mimics Christ. In working against Christ in the reign of Christ, he does what? Mimics Christ. Let me show you 3 pictures in the book of Revelation that show that. 3 pictures. All right, let's have the table. Are you still with me? All right, so let's look at it. All right, go to the next one. Next. All right, so here we're going to have certain things about the Christ, and you see how the Antichrist or the beast mimic it, and the references are there if you want to check it out. First one, quickly. These are quotes in the book of Revelation. So in the Christ, he says this: his eyes are like blazing fire, and on his head are what? Man crowning with many crowns, right? Watch this about the beast. And I saw a beast, one of the beasts. I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns, 7 heads, with what? Many crowns. You see? Second one. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever. But about one of the beasts, one of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. And later it calls the beast, it refers to the beast as what? The beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. I was alive forever. This one was wounded and yet lived. Are you seeing? So that when you are reading the book of Revelation, you're not thinking about this 10-headed monster that is coming with 7 heads. It is using pictures to be able to tell you about truths that have already been taught in the Bible. Does this make sense? All right, look at the last one. Jesus said, just as I received from the authority from my Father, he was talking about those he will give authority to. He said that he will give them authority to reign and rule, just as he received authority from the Father. What does it say about the beast? One of the beasts. People worship the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. This makes sense. So we've seen from Jesus' words in the book of Mark, in that time, it will be persecution and deception. We've now seen from the book of Revelation, but I'm not done now, because you say, I need to know more about the Antichrist. The book of Revelation, let's look at it from epistles. The book of Revelation was written by the Apostle John. But a lot of the words were Jesus revealing himself. So it's Jesus' words, but also John, angels, and some of those things. But John himself writes certain epistles. 1 John, 2 John, 3 John. And he's the only one, because notice Antichrist was not used. We've not yet seen the word Antichrist. The only person that used the word Antichrist is John in his epistles. Now listen to what he says about the Antichrist again, because why I'm going through all of this methodically is I don't want us to be deceived. I don't want us to fall short. And I also want us to understand our Bibles better, because he's going to say something absolutely profound. Many people are trying to find and calculate the beast. Who is the beast? Is it the one that is broken peace in the Middle East? I like that. I can say it again. Who is the beast? Is it the one broken peace in the Middle East? Is it the one that's forming the European Union? Is it all these different things? Now, they're talking about people in, maybe it is this guy. What's that guy that they say rules the whole of Silicon Valley? It was a part of the PayPal mafia. Robert Thiel. What? Peter Thiel. Is it Peter Thiel? Is it all of these people we start trying to find? Because the Antichrist is only about the future. Now, look at what John says in 1 John 2, verse 18. Dear children, this is the last hour. He said this is the last hour, just so you know. Remember what we said about the last hour, the last days. He said that 2,000 years ago. He wasn't wrong, because we are in the last hour. Are we together? This is the last hour, and as you have heard, the Antichrist is coming. Future, Abi? The Antichrist is coming. But what did he say after? Even what? Even what? Now, many antichrists have what? So if that happened in his time, what do you think about now? This is how we know it is the last hour. Now, did you get something that maybe some of us haven't put in our theology? There is the Antichrist, and then there are antichrists. There's one more, and I'll then show you the distinction. Now give me 1 John 1, 4, 1 to 3. Dear friends, do not believe what? So when it says every spirit, it means that there are different kinds of spirits, all right? So he's going to break every spirit into two categories for us now. So don't believe every spirit. Now, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. Now, do you remember that Jesus in Mark chapter 13 talked about false messiahs, false prophets, false teachers? You saw that. The beast, one of the beasts was eventually called the false prophet. Now we are seeing false prophets. I'll be here. All right. So then he says, many of them have gone out into the world. Verse 2. This is how we can recognize the... So don't believe every spirit. There are different kinds of spirits. So there are one where the spirits that come from God, the Spirit of God, that's one category. And that Spirit of God is also the Spirit of the Messiah. So sometimes it's called the Spirit of Jesus, Spirit of Christ, is the Spirit of God, right? Every spirit that acknowledges that Jesus, the Messiah, has come in the flesh is from God, verse 3. But every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus is not from God. This is what? I want it to be louder. This is what? Which you have heard is what? But coming, but even now is in the world. Did you catch the three things? We have what? The Antichrist. Then we have what? Antichrists. Then we have what? The spirit of the Antichrist. And we know that the Antichrist is future, but the Antichrist is also now. Why? Because of the spirit of the Antichrist, which lives and is motivating Antichrist before the coming of the Antichrist. If you are confused, just raise your hand if you are still confused. Okay. Somebody's not confused. Okay. If you are confused because it sounds new to you, raise your hand. Okay. We'll break it down even more. The Antichrist, the spirit of the Antichrist, and then Antichrist. Jesus, the Messiah, is what? A man, isn't he? He's God, but he's a man. There are no other Jesus the Messiah, isn't it? Right? So there's Jesus the Messiah, the Christ. But then there are people who follow Jesus. They have the spirit of Christ and they, as much as possible, embody Christ. Remember what Romans 8 tells our future. It says that we should be conformed into the image of Christ. We should become more like Christ. In other words, we should become Christ, mini Christs. And how does that happen? Because we have the spirit of Christ. It is the exact parallel. You have the Antichrist, you have Antichrist, and you have what? The spirit of the Antichrist. If you don't, let me, one more, 2 Thessalonians. Now let's talk about Paul. He doesn't call him the Antichrist, but he actually, you see certain things that you have seen before. So we've looked at Jesus through Mark, we've looked at Jesus through John, we've looked at John, now let's look at Paul. In 2 Thessalonians, Paul tells us about someone, he said, now Jesus the Messiah is about living right. Now he saves you first so that you can live right. Jesus is not lawless. Jesus did not bring us into lawlessness. All right? But this man, he tells us something. He says, don't let any deceive you in any way, for that day, the day of Christ, will not come until the rebellion occurs. And what? The man of, this is Paul's own term, but notice he calls him a man. The man of lawlessness will be revealed. Verse 4, he says, he will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that, what will he do? What does that remind you of? What does that remind you of? The abomination, doesn't it? Proclaiming himself to be God. So let me see if I can put it all together. Oh, no, sorry. Give us verse 7, these 2 Thessalonians. For the secret power of what? Lawlessness is already at work. Can you see they are all saying the same thing? Then keep going. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. In Revelation, the dragon is Satan. So you have Satan, you have his system, and you have the outworking of it. It's the same thing here. Antichrist, the man of lawlessness, working by Satan, but he then says he will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie, verse 10, and then verse 10, and all the ways that wickedness deceives those who are perishing. Brothers and sisters, here's how it works. In the reign of Christ, Satan is at work as well. The Bible says in the book of Revelation that he's given a short time, right? He's going to do things. How does he work? He works through persecution and deception. That working together, that persecution working together is really what is the Antichrist at work. There is the spirit of the Antichrist backed up by Satan that is at work and is already at work. There are Antichrists and then there is the Antichrist. Who are Antichrists? Well, Jesus tells us, false teachers, false prophets. Does that make sense? That is people who so embody the spirit of the Antichrist and so give in to the Antichrist that they are destroying the work of God, if they can. But then there is the spirit of the Antichrist. Now, why am I making this distinction? This is a very important distinction. Please follow me. It is least hard, the difficulty rises in this way, in identifying who they are. It is easier to identify the spirit of the Antichrist first. They are working on the spirit of the Antichrist. Then the Antichrists. Then the Antichrist. Are you following me? Why do I say that? Peter was with Jesus and the other disciples. And Jesus then asked the question, who do men say that I am? Peter said, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Jesus says, flesh and blood did not reveal that to you, but my Father who is in heaven. How does the Father in heaven reveal things on earth? By his Spirit. So who revealed to Peter that Jesus was the Messiah? The Spirit of the Messiah. Fantastic. He was working in Peter, who is a believer in Christ. Not too long after, Jesus then said, let me tell you a little bit more about that Messiah. That Messiah, who I am, is going to die. He's going to suffer on the hands of Jewish people, and he's going to be killed. And on the Peter didn't hear anything after that. He said he will rise on the third day. Peter didn't hear anything about it. Peter then took, because he's a man of honor, he took the Messiah aside. And he said, he rebuked him. Don't ever say that again. What kind of nonsense is that? You will not die. You will die. If you die, me too, I'll die. All of you are not dying. Don't say it again. What did Jesus respond with? He said, get thee behind me, what? Satan. How does Satan work? Through. He said, get thee behind me, Satan, for you do not mind, you are not concerned about the things of God, but merely human concerns. In other words, you were saying the spirit that is speaking through you is against the Messiah. It was what? The spirit of... Now, here's my point. The spirit of the Antichrist can walk through believers too. The fact that the spirit of the Antichrist has walked through someone does not immediately make the person an Antichrist. Are you following me? So what we have to do today, what I want to show you, all that was introduction. Having said a bit of theological foundation, I now want to speak a bit more practically. I want us to be able to identify these three in some ways. How do we identify them, and then how do we deal with them? Now, I'm going to be speaking maybe sometimes on things I don't say as much explicitly, but when the text drives us there, I'm going to talk about it. The spirit of the Antichrist, in terms of deception, I'm talking more about deception, is working in the world, though. He's working in the world. He's working in the world. There's no kidding about that. He's working in the world. But however, did you notice what Jesus said about the abomination that causes desolation? It's in the temple. What did Paul say about the Antichrist? He said he will set himself up, what? In the temple. Now, this has led some people to believe that there will be another temple, physical temple that will be built because of the eschatology. There will be another physical temple that will be built. The Antichrist will come, sort of enter, all of that. Brothers and sisters, the age of physical temple has what? So who is the temple? Who is the temple? You individually, but who else? The church. So when he says that he will set himself up in the temple, where is he talking about? If you don't believe me that the spirit of the Antichrist can walk through in the church, look at what Paul says in Acts chapter 20. He's talking to the elders of probably his most successful church, the church in Ephesus. Acts chapter 20 verse 30. Acts 20 verse 30. Even from your own number, men will arise. From your own number, he's talking to elders, pastors. From your own number, men will arise and what? Distort the truth in order to draw away disciples from them. And he then uses the same injunction that Jesus gives after verse 31. He says, so be what? So, I want to talk about some of the things that are happening through the church that shows you that the spirit of Antichrist is at work. Where the spirit of Antichrist is at work. Now, I'm not necessarily saying this one is an Antichrist, but I'm saying, knowing that it can happen in the church, we must not be deceived. We must be on our guard. And one of the ways that the Antichrist works, the spirit of the Antichrist works, usually, remember I said he mimics Christ. So he takes things that are right, then he either redefines them or maybe exaggerates them, and by doing that, he distorts the truth. Notice he didn't say he just invented a lie. He said what? He distorts the truth. So there are 5 things I want to show us, and I'll just comment on them, right? 5 things. What is true and what is the counterfeit, right? Just give me, I'll say all of them, and then I'll touch on them. So he takes spirituality and he distorts it to spiritism. He takes revelation and he distorts it to get error. He takes honor and distorts it to get worship. I'll touch on all the... And the next one, he takes discernment, turns it into cynicism. And then liberty turns it into license. Let's start with the first one. You can go all the way back. Spirituality to spiritism. Spirituality means, essentially, with the truth of God, that we can have fellowship with God that is beyond our intellect. There's a spiritual connection to God. But sometimes people take that and then do all manner of things. So, for instance, even at the work of the Spirit, I believe in prophecy. I believe in prophecy. You cannot get me out of it. Why? See, there's prophecy over. I'm not giving up now. And there are prophecies over many of us. Of the 4 lists of the gifts of the Spirit, 4 lists of gifts of the Spirit in the New Testament, the only gift that occurs in all 4 is the spirit of prophecy. Is the gift of prophecy. So I believe in it. But do you know that from the beginning of as much as there has been prophecy, from when prophecy has been talked about in the Bible, also false prophecy and false prophets have been spoken about too. So let me show you some of the ways that this is being distorted. Again, by me commenting on certain things, it doesn't mean I am saying that the people that are leading those things are false prophets. I'll get to some of the reasons why. But, for instance, people are prophesying. Now, some people just there are certain movements within especially in Africa. It's just prophets. Somebody comes in, we start to entertain with, hey, treasure, come. Yeah. I'm hearing something about pearls. I'm hearing something about rubies, pearls, I don't know, diamond. Will your name be treasure? Treasure. Okay, treasure. But I'm still hearing rubies. Rubies. Are you connected? Do you know any woman, Ruby? Oh, your wife is Ruby? Ruby? Have I met you before? Do you not have my number? And as I continue, you'll now be hearing a hype man saying, prophesy. And so when that is then, after you've done all of that, the man just says, do you know who I am? Who you be? Do you know who I am? I'm a man in the fight. I am a war. I am the liquid metal. Now we can laugh about it. What does that have anything to do with the message of Jesus Christ? People are prophesying about the color of people's underwear. I'm not joking about that. People are prophesying. Jesus was not a magician. There's a reason why the miracles were not called magic. They were called signs and wonders. Signs that make us wonder, to point us to the Messiah, not to the man of God. I'll give you another one. I believe in different kinds of prayers. Shebi, I taught you over 3 years. And I believe sometimes prayer gets into a particular position that you don't have words. I taught it as well in 2023. However, because of that, you can too emphasize things like groaning in a way that the Bible doesn't emphasize it. So I gather a number of young people now because we have a lot of zeal. Let's pray. And then we start, What are you doing? Right? What are we doing? If I say it now, then some people say I'm making fun of people. I'm not going to do that. In fact, you come and minister, you now say, they thought I was a music minister. I am not a music minister. And then you now start doing groaning. And then people are like, what is going on? And so you have, maybe sometimes, again, I believe in tiring, I believe in long stretches of fast, but now you get a bunch of young people together, they say they fasted and they did not sleep for 24 hours. Hey, when you don't sleep for 24 hours, you will see things, I promise you. But if we say prayer is now only about groaning, the spirit of the Antichrist works within the church. Now, please, I want you to hear me very carefully. I believe in groaning. I have groaned myself. I believe in it. But let me say something. Because quite often, the groaning comes from, in fact, most often, it comes from sessions of deep intimacy with God. Where you are pouring out something that at some point you can no longer express with words, or you have the burden of God upon you, and then you then move to groans. Are you following me? There is a process to it. But it's coming from intimacy. My wife and I, thank God for our marriage, it can keep improving. 16 years this year. It can keep improving, and improving every year. And one of the signs that people have a good marriage, and I'm sure you guys want your pastor's wife your pastor and his wife to have a good marriage, don't you? I was looking for bad belly here. Okay, all right. But part of what that means is that we will be sexually intimate, and part of what you want is that your pastor and his wife are enjoying themselves, isn't it? Isn't it? No babele here. Don't spoil my. You want them to be sexually intimate and to be having a good time. Now, you believe that, you want it. Should you want to see it? Because the moment you want to see that thing which you approve of, because it is so intimate, the moment you see it, it becomes profanity. There are certain things in the intimacy you have with God that nobody should see. So that when I see you guys groaning and doing all of those things, I should not see it. It looks weird. It looks weird because it was never meant to be for public. Beware of the spirit of the Antichrist. I can go on. Related to that one is the next one, revelation and error. But now, here's where I'm going. Do I believe in ongoing revelation? Yes, I do. Do I believe in ongoing revelation in the same way that was given in Revelation for the Bible? Absolutely not. Because the revelation in the Bible is telling you about God's redemptive plan and story that has been sealed. But prophecy comes with the spirit of revelation. So I believe in it. Now, because of that, some people who also believe in it, I saw a vision, I had something, I saw something, and we then start to use the revelation to create doctrine. It's not a problem if it confirms doctrine that's already written. It becomes a problem when doctrine that has been established is now contradicted. And it doesn't matter who it comes from. There's a man of God I respect. I will continue to listen to him. I may have differences of opinion with him, not differences of how to read the Bible with him. I respect him. But I was very disappointed when I heard him that he has gone to heaven 3 times. I'm not discounting, I wasn't there. But he's gone to heaven 3 times, and one of the visions that he saw was Revelation chapter 4-5, right? The elders and the angels, they're all bowing before God. He said at some point, even in one of his visions, Jesus himself came down from the throne and he started to bow before God. No! And I don't care how long that revelation has been. that distorts the foundational theology or the foundational doctrine of the entire church, which is what? The Trinity. You are creating a hierarchy in the Trinity. Your revelation then leads to error. Should I carry on? Let's talk about the third one. Honor and worship. Again, because all of these things are true, I still thought about honor at the end of last year when we were talking about benediction. I have not changed anything on that one. No. Nothing. And I said that we're a church, because of our social demography, the nature of our social demography, we are a church that tends to dishonor. That's a tendency. The more educated you are, the more financially accomplished you are, there's a way you can tend to dishonor men of God and things like that. And so we're trying to bring a corrective. So I believe in honor. But brothers and sisters, I don't care what the demography is. There's a certain time when honor moves to indulgence and a kind of over-reverence that should never be given to any human being. Now, I'm a Yoruba man, so sometimes that would mean that how I'm going to pay honor to somebody that's older, somebody that's in ministry, I can prostrate. I can bow down. Do you understand? Prostrate for them and all of that. Nothing wrong in that. But there's a difference between when I'm prostrated and now to talk to the person, I'm still on my knees, I'm still prostrated. I cannot talk to this man unless I'm on my knees. What is that? What is that? We said that we are honoring somebody, we are bringing them. So to bring them, we have to get this woman, we have to get a presidential suite of 3 or 4 rooms. We have to get the private jet, we have to get the Rolls Royce, we have to put all manner of food inside the car that he's not going to touch. When we get into the room, all manner of food that he's never going to touch, all in the name of what? Honor. And then when it's time to come, we have to put a special carpet, we have to put, and again, to even talk to these people, you are shaking. Another one I respect, absolutely respect, one of the most accomplished people, ministers in this nation. I don't know whether I won't say I respect too much, but some I respect the accomplishment. And said, no believer, he didn't say question, he said no believer can even give advice to a man of God. What? He said, who are you to give advice to? Do you know who a man of God is? To give advice. He said, if you have an opinion, he said, keep it to yourself. Go and pray to God. It is not your position to give advice. So if you can't advise, you can't even question. That is what leads to occults. Because you are basically saying, none of you here can actually push back on me. Why? You are not Jesus. And if you see the ministry, I won't lie to you, I know how that ministry started, but if you see the ministry now, when I sometimes look around the people and he's talking, they look like zombies. I'm not even joking. Let's be careful. Give honor. Push back. Respectfully. It doesn't mean you. I'll talk about that first. Let me come back. Number 4. Discernment and cynicism. Now, you may be the kind of person who has already spotted the first 3. You're like, exactly, PF, exactly, we must discern. This is what I've been talking about. My friend, there's a difference between discernment and cynicism. There are some of us who, because of those things, all you ever do now is to be spotting where, you see, he has said it again, she has said it again, he has said it again, she has said it again. Oh God, we're just praying for them. You are not praying, don't lie. You don't pray. You see some of them on social media. There are some people, their social media account is only for spotting. There's a particular person or 1 or 2 people spotting what the errors of men of God. Some of them may be Antichrist. Some of them, the errors, just the errors. And you see the person just doing like this. Oh, wow. What wonder shall never cease. That's the person's MO. That's all the person does. Allah initially. And basically trying to help the church, Abi. But now, you have not just seen the errors, but you have gotten to a point where you are error prone, so that now your job is to sit above those who are doing what is wrong and just be looking at them. Is that the position that God takes? You're unable to ever see that your own tribe has faults. Yeah, there are different tribes in Christianity, but do you see the fault in your own, or you see in everyone? City Church is a good church. I hope it's a good church, but don't ever think that we don't have problems. We do. We are not the best church. We're not trying to do best church or no best church. No. Be very careful. That same spirit that is deceiving and doing all those things, it can deceive you by becoming the pillar of those who are checking out those who are deceiving. You can end up, this thing can be so, you can become so arrogant that you say that God has appointed you to be the customs officer of the entire church in Africa. An exact quote. That we are the ones that know. We are the ones that know what is contraband and what isn't contraband. What? You? A human being, and you can say that about yourself? Beware of the spirit of the Antichrist. Should we be discerning? Yes. Should it descend into cynicism? No. Final one. Liberty, license. It's all about grace, Abby. It's grace. It's grace. This is where some people discover the grace of God, right? The grace of God, that we are justified, that we are sanctified, that we are converted through no work of ours, just the free grace of God. It's true. But brothers and sisters, please, I'm going to say something. Let's get some things off our chest. First of all, some people redefine. Remember I said refine. Because of the grace of God through Christ, they have found out that they've said that, you see what you see in the Old Testament, a lot of those things that don't fit the character of Jesus, those things should be removed. I have heard quite a number of men of God say it. I love them, they are wrong. We don't have a New Testament as our Bible. We have the Old and the New Testament, inspired by God. You don't have the right to correct anything. You only have the right to interpret it. Amen? But then, even practically as well, because of the grace of God that some of us have found, and I'm not talking about people that became new Christians. I'm talking about people that have been Christians at least for 1.5 years and forward. We now have taken the grace of God to dress anyhow. To dress anyhow. And I'm not just talking about inside church. I'm saying outside church. Don't go and say, at least in church I'm covered. Then outside. No. The only road that we want to see should be outside. We don't want to see the road in between your two breasts. Sorry. You come to church, you go to elsewhere. Why are you wearing something that you keep having to pull down? Your actions is telling you shouldn't be wearing it. And then after, when we now talk about the fact that this is not good, it's time they say, am I the one that made the men's eyes? The men that are looking at you and are lost in, they will be held accountable. The way you are dressing also, you'll be held accountable. Is it possible? And you say, because the grace of God allows it. No. For some of us, it's our use of alcohol. The Bible does not, except I'm not drunk. Why are you always on the verge of being drunk? For some of us, we rival, our nightlife rivals that of unbelievers. I'm sorry, you cannot be a member of church, be going to church all the time. You've been going to church for a long time. So that you are moving from Quillox all the way to church. Sorry. Right? No. What are we talking about here? But one night vigil, come and do, you can't. You say you'll be sleeping off. But in club, you do night vigil constantly. Upon the grace of God. The grace of God that brings salvation has taught us to say no to unworldliness and ungodly living. Titus 2 verse 11 to 13. What am I saying? Stop trying to say Antichrist, he's coming, blah, blah. He's already at work. Are you getting me? So how can we deal with it? Quickly, let's run. How can we deal with it? I want to give you 7 tips on how to deal with the Antichrist. 7 tips on how to deal with the Antichrist. And I'm saying 7 tips because if you see in Revelation chapter 13, the first beast, it says, how do you respond to the first beast? It says it calls for patient endurance. Right? Jesus says, be on your guard. He says, watch out and be on your guard. When it comes to deception, watch out, be on your guard. The second beast, he says, how should you respond? He said, this one calls for wisdom. First one calls for patient endurance. That's what we pray for our brothers and sisters that are being persecuted. But our own, it calls for wisdom. And it's the wisdom that helps you count 666. I'll tell you about that maybe if I have time. So, first tip I want to give. First one is be studious. Turn to your neighbor and say, be studious. Let's not be lazy. Study Bible. Study. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it or all of that. If you don't like theology, don't say, my own is singing. Music people, I'm talking. Don't say, our own is singing. Prayer people, where are you? My own is prayer. All of us must study to show ourselves approved. Some of you said, I didn't understand what you said last week. Did you go back and listen to it? How do you think you're going to master a thing just by listening to it once? This is our year of focus. And I declare over you, it is your year of focus on growing in spiritual and theological knowledge. You will do it. Go back and re-listen. Master the thing. Some people don't know how to master their theology, but they just know how to master bad theology outside. No. Be studious so that you will not be deceived. Amen? Number 2, let me check my notes now. Number 2, be broad. Be broad. By being broad, I mean this. Your tribe does not know everything. We don't know everything. God doesn't save us into a church. He saves us into his kingdom and then calls us to be part of a church. So that means that you must learn primarily from your church, but you can learn from others in other churches as well. Do you understand? Be broad-minded, because no matter what, your church cannot integrate all the different parts. We will still emphasize something here or something there to the exclusion of something. So you need to hear from the kingdom. So be broad. Be broad-minded. And by being broad-minded, I mean this also. If you learn something different from what is in your tribe, or something you've been used to, and even emotionally connected to, be prepared to change. If you hear a superior argument, haven't checked it over a period of time, be prepared to change. Let me give you a personal example of mine. There's a stream in Nigerian Christianity, but they started in America. It's called the Word of Faith movement. Have you heard of Word of Faith? Right? Word of Faith. There are many churches, many Pentecostal churches in Nigeria, Lagos, are Word of Faith churches. I'm not a Word of Faith preacher. City Church is not a Word of Faith church. We believe in faith, but we don't believe in, we are not, there's a whole historical thing there, right? Tied to Kenneth Hagin and all that. We are not. We have different persuasions from that. Are you following me? Word of Faith is primarily identifying with that. They do other things, but they are primarily identifying with that. Now, however, there are things to learn from there. I'm not a member of that, but there are things. Probably the biggest Word of Faith conference in the world right now is constantly held in Nigeria. Wolfbeck. Right? You've heard of Wolfbeck. Right? They still held it just this January. I watch it too. I've been watching it for years. And when I watch it, I learn things. Things that some of the tribes I've been part of didn't have. I'm going to filter through it, but I'm going to learn. I'm going to take my own. I'm not going to spend time talking about what I disagree with. I already know. But God has deposited things in different tribes, genuine tribes, and you will not always get it in your tribe. Am I speaking to someone? Be broad. Third one, be restrained. It seems like a contradiction. It's not a contradiction, it's a tension. Be restrained. Because even though I have said learn from other places, in that same vein, I'm not saying just jump into everything. Are you getting what I'm saying? Because some people, whenever we hear something new, our followership of the way we learn theology is it brand new? Is it fresh? You don't do that. There's a reason why certain truths have been established and they don't change in virtually all tribes. There's a reason why they have remained there for a period of time. Not everything that is mainstream comes from a dirty stream. One time I argued with someone, a man of God as well. He was one of these people talking about no baptism. And I was showing him all the scriptures and everything. And then at one point, he was still going back. I said, guy, let me tell you something. I said, and some of you have heard me say this. I said, you should be scared a little bit. That something that has been believed by all churches for 2,000 years, across, and church, we don't always agree on many things. But something that's believed by all churches over 2,000 plus years, this 20-something-year-old man, you have all of a sudden discovered something that none of us knew. That one alone should make you scared. One particular tradition I was very influenced by, whenever people convert to the tradition, let me just call it, it's called Reformed tradition. Whenever people become Reformed, there was the theologian that said something. He said, the next stage, he called it something. He called it the cage stage. What does it mean? He said, because usually when people become Reformed, the first thing you want to say, all those people were wrong. All those people were wrong. You want to, he said, no, keep them in a cage. Some of us should be restrained. Just have some certain level of restraint. Are we together? All right, let's keep rushing. Number 4, be courageous. Be courageous. What do I mean by that? I understand why we want to be respectful. I understand why we want to show honor. But can you be courageous enough to sometimes just say, that thing I heard, I don't need discernment, I don't need anything, that thing was wrong. We know certain things that are wrong doctrinally. We know certain behaviors that are wrong. Don't say, we don't know, sometimes men of God have a personal relationship with God. We don't know what God told him. I'm not talking about, yes, there's a place for that. But I'm talking about for things that are categorically wrong. You should be able to say it. And when I say you should be able to say it, I don't mean go on Facebook, go on Instagram. I just mean you yourself be able to say, no. Sir, I love you. I respect you. Everything God has done through you, but no. Let me give an example. I'm going to give an example that will make some people, the name I'm going to call is going to make some of us uncomfortable on our seat. All I'll say is wait till the end of what I'm going to say. The most revered pastor, I think it's incontrovertible. The most revered pastor in this Nigeria today, I think almost everyone would agree, is Pastor who? E. Adeboye. Right? A couple of years ago, Pastor Adeboye said something. I think it was either talking to leaders or in church or none of that, but it went public. Pastor Adeboye said, if you don't tithe, you will not make heaven. And at that point, people are like, Daddy Gio, yeah. So can you say more, Daddy? And I'm talking about people that will be in front of him like, it's Daddy Gio. He was wrong. Absolutely wrong. Totally wrong. You don't need discernment for that. He was absolutely wrong. Now, some people could not say that. Some people started saying, well, it depends how you did it. And prior to that, those people would never have said it. Some other people, what they then did was, not only is it wrong, for you to say that, you yourself, you are wrong. In other words, they were saying it wasn't just that teaching was false, he himself was a false teacher. So you see the two responses. One, they couldn't say anything. You never know what God has revealed to him. Because you look at all the wonderful things that God has done through him, magnificent, like God, my God, he's done many things to him. So, could he be wrong? So they kept quiet and they were now trying to find a way of trying to make it right. I think it was last year or 2 years ago. God bless that man. He came out, he didn't just say, he said, I said this, because it was public. He said, I said this, he said, I was wrong. He didn't say, well, you people didn't hear me well. He didn't say that. He said, I was wrong. And then he said, I apologize. Now, watch this. All those people that said, this man is a false prophet and a false teacher. Now, where are you? Because, listen, the reason why I have a lot of constraint, before I call someone a false teacher or a false prophet, is this. Once you say someone is a false teacher, a false prophet, or an antichrist, you are basically saying they are agents of the devil. They can never be saved. That's what you are saying. That's how the Bible describes it. So now that you have called Pastor Adeboye a false teacher, a false prophet, and he has now apologized, what will you say? Because here's the thing also, and I want to bring that constraint again to people here. Some of us here, we do that. If some of us were around on the night that Jesus was taken arrested, not only based on their responses, not only will you have condemned Judas, you will have also have condemned Peter as an antichrist. Am I wrong? Wait. You can say that what this person said is wrong. It doesn't mean the person himself is wrong. Be careful. But the second thing, for those of us who are not courageous. So before Daddy Gio said that thing, you didn't believe it. When Daddy Gio said it, you believed it. Now that Daddy Gio has now said he doesn't believe it, now what do you believe? Who do you follow? Be courageous. We can be respectful, we can be honoring, but that doesn't mean that everything anybody says, we should take it, including the person that is speaking to you. I can tell you, last year, Pastor Francis and I, after he called me on one Monday, after I preached one sermon, we spent 2 hours on the phone. He was debating, said, that thing you said, I'm not sure. 2 hours. In 2023, this one, he didn't even give me Monday. I don't know what's wrong with the guy. He didn't give me Monday. He called me after we had finished church. I just got to know, I just had my lunch. And then another 1.5 hours. He didn't say, because Femi knows the word. And this thing, I'm not sure. But notice, he came to meet me. And I want to also caution for some of us, the fact that I'm saying be courageous doesn't mean, because some of us, what courage is we express it, supposed courage, we express it through gossip. Did you hear what they said? You have a WhatsApp group of people that like you start sending, they've come again. I'm serious. That one, Titus 3 speaks about you. He said you are trying to destroy the work of God. He said you are warped, you are divisive. No. Respectfully come to the leaders and say, this thing, can we look at it again? Am I still speaking? Are you still here? All right, we have 3 more and we'll rush through. The fourth one is be humble. Be humble. The fact that you've discovered something that other men of God don't know doesn't mean that they're Antichrist. It just means that God was gracious to you. Be humble. If you want to correct people, right, do it in a right way, but it must always start with this. I got to this understanding now. Prior to when I got to this understanding, what was I? Was I a false teacher? Was I a false prophet? No, you were growing. And sometimes God makes us grow in certain directions. Some of them have grown in one direction. They didn't grow in the direction that you have, but they are brothers and sisters. We're in the same kingdom. Be humble. Amen. And then, number 6, be intimate. By that I mean this. Things like humility, things like character, they don't grow just by instruction, somebody teaching you. Guys, and I want to speak very specifically to certain people in this church, who the experiential part, the intimacy part, I don't do all of that. Some of us, sad, very sad, because we're going to pray after the sermon. Some of us, the moment you say, get up to pray, and you see music team there, and you see they want to start doing this prayer, me and no sabi, that's when you walk out. That walking out is a reflection. It's an actual reflection on something that is actually distorted in your spiritual life. Maybe it's not your personality bent, but that's why you have to be able to say, but God has ordained that this thing should happen. God, help me to stay in the place of prayer. Help me for this experiential part. Help me to be intimate. Because many times it's in the place of intimacy, as you're exalting and worshiping God, that He shows you things that ordinarily, as the preacher is talking, you can't get there. The preacher has primed the pump, but now as you're experiencing God, that's where you see where you aren't humble. That's where you see where you have that idol. Are we together? And then finally, be on Christ. Be on Christ. I've not forgotten about what we're talking about. You know the funny thing about all this thing about the Antichrist? We are told to discern the spirit of the Antichrist and those who embody it. We are told to discern them. Do you know that there's no place where we are really told to identify the Antichrist? We're not told to identify it, because when you say identify the Antichrist, who is it? What? Some of the things I was talking about. It's when, can you imagine some people, when they read their Bible and once and start talking about eschatology, right? After they read New Testament, you know what you're meant to do? You're meant to go to the Old Testament, you're meant to compare. Some people, once they read it, you know where they go to? They go and get their calculator. Okay, if it's 300 years, 2,000 years from Christ has come, they say 1,000 years, blah, blah. You start subtracting, doing all of those things. You start checking the moon. They said the full moon, this one. You start checking current affairs. Netanyahu, is it the one? You start doing all that. Many people thought Arafat, because in 1990 there was a deal that was brokered, right? Camp David Accord. There was not a peace deal. It is now coming. It didn't work. Stop doing that. Stop being fixated on the Antichrist. You know why? Let me ask you a question. Is the year 2009, 2010, or anywhere between 2009 and 2011? Who will you be more fearful of? Osama or Obama? I won't lie to you. Osama gave me the creeps, eh? I remember funny enough, my parents and my younger sister flew into New Jersey just in September 2001. They flew in. My younger sister always tells the story that I flew in because they went to New Jersey, and you know Jersey is very close to New York. And so she talks about flying in and seeing the Twin Towers. And that by the time they were going back, not seeing the Twin Towers again. I remember just after that, not long, I had to travel to the US. I remember saying, all things are passed away. And you have to please take the context. Take the, turn to your neighbor and say, take the context. And please, media people, don't go and cut this thing and then now, But I said that time, if I see anybody with Mugemu, anybody with beard, I'm not entering that plane. I'm not entering. I said, if I hear anybody say Allah, I will not enter any plane. Because it was that time they now introduced security at... Osama gave us the creeps, so. And when I think about... that's Osama. But when I think about Obama... How you doing? I don't think fear. I think vibes. I think I just give me... yes, we can. Yes, we can. When you think of Obama, it's like, it's vibes. So if I'm thinking about fear... In 2009, 2010, 2011, if I want somebody to be on my side when I'm going into a war, it's going to be Osama. I don't want to be connected to Obama. It's Osama I want to find. Let me tell you something. In 2011, Barack Obama attended a correspondence dinner. He was cracking jokes, making all kinds of fun. They were all laughing. It was a wonderful time. It was in the evening. By the time they finished, he went into the bunker somewhere. And he was there as they were conducting an operation to catch Osama bin Laden. Barack Obama killed Osama bin Laden with an instruction: kill him. Easily. You are so fixated on Osama, whereas Obama has all the power. He can destroy the one that you are scared of very easily. Give me 2 Thessalonians 2. 2 Thessalonians 2 is the supposed chapter. Give me verse 3. Is the supposed, leave it there, go back. Is the supposed chapter of the Antichrist. And so when we get into the Antichrist, we're always so fixated. I want to find the Antichrist. When he says about the Antichrist, look at what he says. He said, do not what? Easily become what? Or what? Or what? Turn to your neighbor and say, about the Antichrist, don't be alarmed. Now go to verse 3. Why shouldn't you be alarmed? He said, don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the man of lawlessness is revealed. His name is the man of lawlessness, but he's described as what? The man what? The moment the Twin Towers fell down, Osama bin Laden was doomed to destruction. He unleashed the force of the greatest army in the entire world. He did not know what he was taking up. And this same man, it is said that you are so fixated about, that you are so scared of. He says what? He is doomed to destruction. Give me the next part. He then says in verse 8, whom the Lord Jesus will overthrow with what? The breath of his mouth, and destroy by the splendor of his coming. The destruction of the Antichrist will be like this. Who should you be more scared of? The Antichrist or the Christ? I know who I'm rolling with. So when you are talking about eschatology and all of this, my friends, focus on Jesus. Why? The Antichrist is doomed to destruction. The spirit of the Antichrist, all the beasts will be destroyed. Revelation 19 verse 20 says that what? The beast was captured, and with the false prophet who had performed signs on his behalf, the two of them were thrown, not even dead. They were thrown alive into what? The fiery lake of sulfur. Can you turn to your neighbor and say, fix your focus on the Christ? Be on Jesus. Nobody perishes because they did not identify the Antichrist. These 2 Thessalonians 2 that is about the Antichrist. Listen to why he said people perish. Give me the next one. They perish. These 2 Thessalonians 2, they perish because they refuse to identify the Antichrist, the man of lawlessness. Is that what it says? Is that what it says? Why did they perish? Because they refuse to love the truth, so be saved. Say, no, I don't want to get the mark of the Antichrist. You will not get the mark of the Antichrist. You know why? You are chosen and you are elect. The way you get rid of the mark of the Antichrist is not by not going there or not going there. It is by going and getting the seal of God. So that's why he said in verse 13. Verse 13, he then says, but we ought to always thank God for you. I thank God for all the members of City Church who follow Christ. I thank God for you. Why? He says, brothers and sisters, loved by the Lord, because God what? Chose you. The same thing that Jesus said, but for the elect whom he has chosen. For God chose you as his first fruits to be what? Through the sanctifying work of the Spirit. If you read Ephesians 1, verse 13 to 14, it tells you that when he says, when you are saved by believing the gospel, he says then he marked his seal upon you, the Holy Spirit, guaranteeing what is meant to come. So he says, saved through the sanctifying work of the Spirit and through belief in the truth. Verse 14 will end there. He called you to this. Through what? That you might share in the glory of the Lord Jesus Christ. It's a funny thing and an ironic thing that even in the study of the end time, the Antichrist, we still land on Jesus. It's an ironic thing that even in the study of the whole end times, we still land on who? Jesus. Be on Jesus. City Church, we call ourselves a gospel-centered church, not because we don't want to be a deep church. We could have called ourselves the remnant. We could have called ourselves the Enoch generation church. All of those things that try to show that we are deep. I will know that you are truly deep if you believe the gospel. Amen.